telecom industry has evolved in its kaleidoscopic view. The growth from PSTN to 2G and then 3G. The industry has witnessed major transformations over the last decade, leaving a huge scope of envisaging and exploring diverse dimensions.
We would like to invite Dr. R. Venkateshwaran, Senior Vice President and General Manager at Persistent Systems Limited, to throw some light on the topic telecom transformations. Sir, we request you to come up on the stage.
Dr. R. Venkateshwaran, popularly addressed as Venki amongst the business fraternity, is presently the Senior VP and General Manager for key focus areas at Persistent Systems. He heads new business activities and manages profit and loss of 4 key business units: collaborations, cloud, BI analytics, and mobility at Persistent. Prior to joining Persistent, Sir worked as a researcher in Bell Laboratories and at Lucent Technologies. Sir has earned his BTech and MTech in Computer Science from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and has a PhD in Computer Science from Washington State University. He also holds multiple patents in the area of ATM multicasting. We welcome you, sir, to Communique 11.
Sir, we request you to kindly preside over the session.
Good evening, everybody. I know it's kind of late and you all had a very long 2-day sessions. So what I'll do is, when Professor Patil called me a few days back and said that, would like me to speak something at this very prestigious event. Now, I was thinking as to what do I really talk about. And then, given the timing, I felt that, it would be really appropriate to at least borrow the theme of this 2-day session, which is telecom transformation, use that as the context, and try to talk a little bit about what we can expect in the future in the as part of the evolution of the telecom industry. What I'll do is keep this the presentation fairly short, and if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to address those as a more from a interactive session than something that wherein I speak a lot and I don't get to hear the feedback. So to quickly move on, the telecom industry has always been a very, very interesting industry in the sense that it has been transforming itself every few years. And 10 years in the telecom industry is a very, very long time. So I just try to capture, what were the essence of the last 20 years in the telecom industry. So if you look at the 1990s, it was the industry, it was driven primarily by the internet, the growth of the internet. The years 2000 to 2010 primarily was the driving force behind mobility, was the driving force in this 10 years. And as we now move into the 2010 decade, we see a lot of thrust happening towards cloud. And I believe that is going to be the defining factor for the coming few years now. So when we look back at what has been the driving force in the year 2020, we would feel that the past 10 years were driven by when cloud and other technologies become more and more what I would call as something that we just get used to and become more and more commonplace. We would be looking back at and thinking that 2010, the year from 2010 to 2020 would be the year of the cloud, or years of the cloud. Okay. The changing landscape. So when you talk about telecom, as to the first thing that comes to mind when you say who's the what is a telecom player? Who are the players in the telecom industry? The operators come into mind as the first our first thought that comes into our mind, right? But if you look at it, what's happening now is that the whole telecom industry, there are new players who are entering into this ecosystem. You have Googles, the Amazons, and the companies like Apple entering or competing or really giving the telecom players a very hard time and really marginalizing the telecom players, the telecom operators, to being just plain old connectivity providers or big fat pipe providers. So that's been the trend that we have started observing. And Apple, for the first time when Apple came out with their iPhone, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the US industry, the US telecom operators. They've always been the ones who drive how the handsets or which handsets get accepted by them and which handsets become popular with their masses. And for the first time in the history, Apple decided that they would be the ones who will really be in the driver's seat. And they tied up with AT&T and made it complete change of how the whole industry moves. For the first time, the operator took a back seat, and the driver in the driver's seat was Apple. They drove it through their iPhone and then through the later versions of iPhone, and now with the iPad and other tablet form factors, they now still continue to innovate, continue to bring out new business models, continue to keep driving the telecom industry. Similarly, of course, Google and others have also been in their own way the driving forces of change in this changing landscape. And now, as we see, things happening, and we heard a lot about in the previous session about how Facebook and other social media really are playing a key role here. What would really drive the coming years is that can we consider Facebook to be the next operator or a service provider? Any reason why they should not be? Just look at Facebook today, right? What are the services that they offer? Connectivity among friends, first thing, right? Which is your also nice way of putting it, saying that it's your address book. They offer ways to chat, text chat, voice chat, video calling, text call, voice calling, SMS connectivity. Pretty much, if you look at it, all the services that are being offered by a traditional telecom operator is now being offered by Facebook. So why wouldn't you want to consider them as the next generation telecom operator? No reason not to, right? And they are really giving the telecom operators the run for the money, in the sense that when you get you don't really get to interface with the telecom operator as much as you get to interface with the Facebooks or the Googles of the world. And that's going to be the changing landscape in the coming years. These companies that we talked about are also driving a lot into the enterprises. It's not just consumer-based applications anymore. So if you look at an enterprise CIO, how are their viewpoints changing? The telecom operators, when they were dealing with the telecom operators of the past, they were always taking a network-centric view, talking about, I need connectivity from my location X to location Y, I need 2 Mbps connectivity or 10 Mbps or whatever. It was always a network-centric view. And whatever information they needed, it was something that they had to pull, ask for it and they'll get it. It was never a push. What is happening in this landscape is that the enterprises are also now, the CIOs of the enterprise are thinking more from an enterprise-centric view. What that means is, again, flipping the whole thing on top of its head, saying that they are now saying, okay, these are the services that I want, and I don't care who provides them, be it the Google or the Facebooks or the VMwares of the world or the Rackspaces of the world. They want certain kinds of services, and these are no longer driven by things like connectivity or access and so on and so forth. So that's a completely different view of the entire telecom landscape as well. So what are the main drivers behind this new? If you look at the companies that we talked about here, it's kind of categorized into 3 main verticals or pillars. One is the cloud pillar, the Googles or the VMwares or the others, the Rackspaces of the world. They all fall under the cloud pillar. The second is around the mobility, the Apples and the likes. And the third is all around social, what we would call as collaboration environment. Okay? So if you have these 3 pillars around which the new services are going to be centric, let's take one at a time. First talk about, what is there from an enterprise perspective. Again, I'm taking the enterprise view because that's where the operators really had a very big role to play, and they continue to have a role to play. And how do they see themselves evolving as the enterprise CIO start thinking differently about, not about connectivity or network-centric view, but more from an enterprise-centric view. So typically enterprise CIO, when they talk about, how do they move their applications and their data to the cloud, there are a few things that they look at. I don't need to go through a detailed list of criteria that they use, because I'm sure you must have had a session on the cloud where many of these points will be covered. But just to summarize, the workforce distribution, the cost, security, all these aspects, performance and location, flexibility, all these aspects come into picture when they decide how to really, what to move to the cloud, what to retain in the enterprise, and so on. So is there a single one cloud that fits all the requirements of an enterprise? Definitely not. So if you look at it as a traditional, very, very localized environment, enterprise-owned infrastructure, the cloud that really matches closest to that need is the private cloud, which is, again, owned by the enterprise, managed by somebody else maybe, but completely driven by the requirements of the enterprise. It's a cloud, yes, the data is on the cloud, but it is still very, very private, secure, only access is controlled to only the employees of the enterprise, and so on. Now, definitely that's not really benefiting or getting the value of the cloud, right? Ultimately, the value of the cloud comes in when you start getting the advantage of, combining multiple infrastructure elements and sharing them across different enterprises. So co-locating at the data center is a happy medium, or the next step, wherein the infrastructure that used to be on-premise at the enterprise is slowly migrating to a data center which is co-located with other enterprise data centers as well. So the data center expenses are now amortized and shared across multiple enterprises. Then, of course, the next step, or the further away in terms of cost benefits, in terms of other advantages, comes with the public cloud, which is a platform as a service. So the Amazons and the VMwares and others who are offering these as a service are pretty much moving, helping the enterprises to move as much as data as they can to the public cloud. Definitely, there are issues of what needs to be in a private cloud, what needs to be in the public cloud, what needs to be co-located. The enterprises need to have a very, very well-defined policy. Again, a lot of it, based on the criteria that I listed earlier, would be used to determine which ones would really move where. And then there is this whole new evolution of industry-specific cloud, which is something that's happening as we speak here. Not a whole lot of articles or discussion has happened around industry-specific cloud, but the beauty of this is that verticals which are in the same kind of domain are trying to create a cloud that would benefit that domain. Again, a lot of sharing happens here, but at the same time, it is still something very, very focused for that industry. So the leaders of those industries are the ones that are really driving this and want to be the thought leaders in setting up an industry-specific cloud. So what's a good example? Let's take a banking industry. So now a banking industry, the leaders of the banking industry create a cloud that would provide services that are very, very specific to the banking industry, which are not generic that what a public cloud would provide, or not as customized or as aligned with a specific enterprise. So the benefits of the cost benefits, the other advantages that come with moving the data and the applications to the cloud, all the benefits get leveraged. At the same time, it is so customized, it's customized enough that most of the enterprises can immediately relate to it. So that's the industry-specific cloud. And on top of that is the management layer, so which is very similar to what a telecom OSS, BSS would, applications would offer, which is provisioning, configuration, monitoring, authorization, policies. All that would typically go with an OSS, BSS application. Now, when you have all these clouds and there are pieces of data and applications residing in each one of them, how does an enterprise manage it all? Obviously, they don't want to be the ones. They want to focus on growing their business, focus on what is core to their business, and not really worry about how these are getting managed. So that gives birth to the virtual private cloud, which I'm sure you have all heard of, which is the Amazons and others are offering this as a service, where all these pieces of information that and application data, all that are residing in various as various components across the cloud infrastructure are now interconnected and give the view to the enterprise as one single cloud, and that's the virtual private cloud. Okay? And if the enterprise is not going to be able to manage it, it will give rise to an operator who's going to be a virtual private cloud operator. Again, there aren't too many such players today in the world, and Amazon and others would probably be one of the earlier ones. And you may have seen Verizon acquiring CloudSwitch. which is which enables them to become a virtual private cloud operator if they can very well define what are the criteria and what a virtual private cloud operator has to do. So primarily, what are the 4 or 5 things that they have to do? Yeah, they have to be the single point of contact for the CIOs to manage end-to-end all the infrastructure-related components. They have to help in the migration of the applications, the data, they have to support it, they have to manage it, they have to monitor it, and integrate it with the rest of the enterprise systems. All that is part of the responsibility or headache of the virtual private cloud operator. And a new concept of enterprise app store, which are the applications that are very, very specific and customized for the enterprise. How do we develop those? How do you create them? And how do you maintain, manage all the app stores and so on? And finally, how does this work as a financial model? Very simple, a monthly pricing or whatever usage-based pricing, whatever is the right appropriate engagement model, business model, would work here as well. And the headache of the enterprise CIO gets transformed as an headache of the virtual private cloud operator. Is it a done deal? Definitely not. There are more challenges. I have very simplified the whole thing to a fairly large extent, but there's a lot more to be, there are a lot of pieces that there are gaps here, but it's just a matter of time when those gaps will get filled. So what happens to the enterprise data when this whole thing, all these, the cloud providers and others come into the picture, is that your enterprise data applications and the data that is there get completely disentangled. When the enterprises were managing everything themselves, all these were completely intertwined and very, very closely connected, but now they are disentangled. And since the cloud provider is now managing not just one enterprise, but multiple enterprises, they have an opportunity to aggregate all this information, the data that they have, from multiple enterprises and create additional innovative services. So where does the service innovation happen? Yeah, you have the enterprise data, you have all the aggregated data from all these enterprises, and you have a lot of public data as well, collected from the Facebooks or the LinkedIns or wherever else the data is available. And you start now collecting all this data, and you can now, once you start mining this data using data analytics techniques, you can get some insights that are really unique. And they can now take these insights and provide it back to the enterprises as a service. And this is not it's not as simple as I pointed out here. It's not just a question of 3 pieces of data. There's going to be a lot of technology challenges. There's going to be a lot of limitations in terms of how much data can you handle, because the volume of data that we are talking about is phenomenal. It goes into terabytes, petabytes, and so on. And to be able to glean out valuable insights from this is a big challenge. But there are companies that have done it for specific verticals. I'll just talk about one such example. There's a company called Concur that they have been offering services in the cloud for travel management. So basically, enterprises where the employees travel, this company has been offering a travel reimbursement kind of an application, wherein you submit all your travel-related information, scan your receipts, and then pretty much send it out, and a workflow that gets your approvals, and finally the reimbursement happens. So they have been offering this as a service for a while now, and they recently realized that they have been offering it to so many enterprises. Why not? And they had access to so much of data from historical as well as ongoing data from multiple enterprises, multiple industries, and so on. They started creating a value-added service around this data. So now they started talking about which are the 25 most visited US cities, and if it is in the city, what are the kinds of typical room rates, hotel room rates, and so on and so forth, flight rates, what is a good dining experience, where do you go and get good dining experience, what is a typical, how much does a typical dinner cost. These are kinds of insights that they are able to glean out from this. And now you can go and really use this data. So when someone is now making a travel reservation, the employee of that enterprise can now, before they make their reservation, can also look at this data and figure out, okay, last time I stayed in hotel X, which was 20%, 25% more expensive than what I should really be paying. So why not really cut down my expenses? So these kinds of insights as a value-added service the benefit is phenomenal. Okay. So enough on the cloud part. Let me quickly move on to all I'm saying is that once you move to the cloud, there's a lot more things that can happen, and that's where analytics and other things comes in. So what I really want to emphasize is that the cloud is one of the stacks. So the second stack is the mobility stack. The mobility stack comes in where, once you have all the data, the enterprise data has already moved to the cloud, it's much more easier for access for anybody who has a mobile device. And when I say mobile device, not just the phone, it's also now the tablet, the laptops, whatever it is, what different form factors, to be able to access this data in a much more seamless manner. So what they were doing in the enterprise is now outside the enterprise, they have similar access. So they are now able to get access to that data wherever they are, anytime, anywhere, at any place, through any device. And that brings in, again, a whole lot of value add in terms of, these may not be tangible benefits, but definitely in terms of productivity and other things, the intangible benefits can be many. So, the other thing is, when you talk about mobility is that, when you start bringing in all these mobility together, how do you decide, how does an enterprise decide what mobile devices should be allowed and not allowed? Obviously, the CIO of the enterprise, what I talked about earlier, when he's thinking about, how to move the data to the cloud, he's also thinking about, how do I manage and control the behavior of my employees in terms of, they not bringing in outside stuff into the enterprise and taking the enterprise stuff outside and so on. So, managing these mobile devices is a very, very critical requirement that the enterprise is thinking about. Okay. A recent Forrester report that came out 2-3 days back was talking about, one statistics which was very interesting, is that 48% of the employees of an enterprise really do not care or do not even think about whether the device that they're buying will be supported by the CIO of the enterprise or not. They really don't care. They go buy the device because it solves their problem, which is, or whatever it is the latest, greatest device, whatever be the reason. So they go and buy the device based on their personal requirements, and once they've bought the device, now they want to bring the device into the enterprise, throws up a whole lot of challenge. We talked about an enterprise app store. So there are these very specific applications that are very specific for the enterprise. How do you make sure that, those apps get, these devices that come into the enterprise get access to those apps? So a new technology which has been becoming very, very popular now, it's been around for last 1 or 2 years, but it's really gathering a lot of momentum, is the whole HTML5 technology, which is a web-based technology. It's replacing a lot of the old generation web applications. Rich applications based on technology like Flash and Silverlight are all giving way to an HTML-based web application, primarily because of two things. One, it allows a very, very powerful media encoding capability. Second, it allows users to have offline access to the web content by supporting local storage. So with these two bringing in, as the drivers for HTML5, what's happening is that, and of course, it works on any browser, HTML5 compliant browser, so they don't need to have an app to be downloaded and so on and so forth. So the ability to support a diversity of devices becomes much more simpler when you build applications using a technology like HTML5. And of course, it does not in any way compromise on the, of course, definitely native apps on an iPhone or an iPad is much more rich user interface, has a much richer user interface, but the technology is catching up quickly to really bridge that gap very significantly. And finally, we talked about, when we talked about the data being accessible and aggregation and all that, the third stack, which is the social stack, becomes a very, very critical component. As enterprises become, the data becomes available on the cloud, you don't want to just have the data as a dump of everything that is happening. You want that data to be available. You want people, the enterprise employees, to be able to share it across their colleagues and so on. So there the social component comes in. So taking technologies like Facebook and others, you don't want obviously to have public access to Facebook or a public, because you don't want your friends who are not part of your enterprise fraternity to get access to it, but to be able to get that as a social enterprise becomes a very, very critical requirement. And that's something that, people who are used to now Facebook on their personal lives want to now bring in all those concepts back into the enterprise to share, to chat, to communicate, to to collaborate, to work across geographies. All that becomes a very viable solution by leveraging the social component. So to quickly summarize, the future coming, the next 10 years are going to be primarily driven by the cloud, and with complete, the completeness of the solution will be enhanced with the mobility and the social dimensions And that is going to be really going to be the key drivers where the telecom operators have to really play a very critical role. New telecom operators are going to come into the picture. Like I said, the Googles or the Facebooks may be the new telecom operators of the future. The virtual private cloud operator could be the operator of the future. It could be an existing telecom operator or a completely new entity. We don't know. Time will tell who is going to be successful. Business models are going to be the drivers. And finally, it is the acceptability by the masses, the enterprise employees or the consumers, is what is going to really be the driver for this, the next 10 years. So with that, I want to really take this opportunity to thank Professor Patil for having me here, and just wanted to congratulate the team that has worked very hard to make this event a very, very, very successful event. I hope you all had a very fruitful 2 days and look forward to many more such interactions in the future. With this, I'll just open it up for any questions. Any questions?
Good evening, sir. So my name is Karan Singh. I'm from second year marketing and finance. My question is there are many issues which are related to cloud. The biggest one is, of course, security. But my question is regarding the metering and chargeback, because how do we actually charge the customer who is using our services on cloud?
Right.
Because we don't want to overcharge our customer, neither do we want any kind of leakage in our system. So how do we overcome that?
So if you look at it, I mean, the cloud charging is no different from what a telecom operator does today, right? How does a telecom operator charge you for a mobile phone usage? Pretty much similar, right? So you may have multiple ways of doing it. One is a usage-based, like a per minute charging that many operators use today. The other is a flat fee monthly charge, which is, you pay whatever, 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees, whatever it is, and all you can use. So both these models will work very well in the cloud infrastructure as well. It's no different. So if you look at it, I mean, in some sense, the cloud is a reincarnation of what the telecom operators have been doing for the last 20 years, nothing new. Which is why it's very important that telecom operators realize this, and they can be in the forefront and be the guys who drive the cloud. Unfortunately, that's not happening for whatever reasons, maybe because of legacy issues or whatever, the baggage that they have to carry. But if you look at it, they are the ones that can really define how this thing will happen. But from a technology perspective, there is really not a whole lot different from how you were being charged for your telephone network usage, be it on a usage-based or a flat monthly fee. So I don't see that being any different. But yes, there are additional concerns like security that you alluded to. But by and large, if you look at it, 2 years back, security was really something that everybody talking about the cloud was really something that people were really worried about. But a lot of those concerns are getting addressed as we evolve the cloud infrastructure. That's why I said, there are these evolution of cloud also. There are multiple dimensions to cloud. There is a very, very secure private cloud. There is a reasonably open public cloud, and there are in between hybrid clouds in between. And depending on your level of need, your level of willingness to pay, the cost, pricing, all that would come into picture. Of course, you would be adopting one or the other. And an enterprise may use multiple different components for different sets of data, different sets of applications.
Thank you, sir.
There's a question there.
Good evening, sir. Dinesh here from Marketing and Finance second year. My question is also related to pricing, especially in software as a service. Generally, the software are priced in a way that you have to get a license for them. So you get license for 1 day, 7 days, 3 months. But in a cloud environment, if you get these licenses, so don't you think that it doesn't remain true to the very spirit of cloud computing, that pay as you use? What if I want to use it for only for 12 days and I'm paying it for 15 days? So do you think that a new pricing model will come, like minute of usage or something like that?
Yeah. See, again, It's a question of, how much do you want the cloud operator to really spend on really calculating, over your usage, right? So there is always a, what I would call is, how much fine granular can you go? So today, you have per minute billing, and then you have per second billing, then you may have sub-second billing, and then you have millisecond billing, and so on and so forth. So there is a limit to which you want to also, see, the cost of measuring that unit should not exceed the actual cost of actually providing that service. So yeah, that's the first thumb rule that you have to be very, very cognizant about. So whether, it is to be in days or hours or minutes or seconds is something that the cloud operator will over a period of time evolve. So today they may offer, multiple, which is days probably, because they believe that their systems have not sophisticated enough to, have a very cost-effective way of measuring hourly utilization. So if you are using it only for 2 hours in a day and you have to pay for 10 days, I mean, that's a compromise that you have to be willing to pay, but the 10-day cost is also not a whole lot, because the whole cost is amortized over multiple such users. So they are not pricing you for the peak usage, but more for a, what I would call as an average or a threshold-based pricing. So in that context, you would not be overpriced, but yes, it may not be very, very closely aligned with your exact usage. At the same time, yes, just like you say that, I use it for 2 hours and I pay for 10 days, there may be somebody who is really using it for the complete 10 days and still paying something which is not commensurate to what they're using. So there will always be those benefits and, pros and cons with any pricing model. However, whatever pricing model you look at, even if you take flat monthly fee pricing, you will have the same concerns. So it doesn't go away. It's just the question of, how much does the operator really want to spend to really do that fine granular measurement. And over a period of time, as these systems become more sophisticated, you'll be able to do it even more fine granular than a day.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Any other question? If not, thank you once again. It's been a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a thought-provoking session and letting us know that in this changing landscape, the defining factors in the telecom domain can be 3 pillars: cloud, mobility, and socially collaborative environment. The services are moving from being network-centric to now being enterprise-centric, and thereby the innovation using data analytic techniques and other technologies can be made use of. It was truly an informative session that we all would cherish.